The snow falls over Central Park. The air is freezing. The city sounds are muffled. And a lonely figure covered in pigeons steps from the shadows, forever cementing herself in cinematic history. But the woman beneath the feathers carried secrets Hollywood never knew. Home Alone fans mourn beloved actress Brenda Fricker. Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a story that just completely shatters the illusion of the Hollywood machine. We spend so much time analyzing these, carefully curated celebrity personas. But today we are looking at a woman who lived this unapologetically raw, subversive life right under the industry's nose.
It really is a staggering life to unpack. We're doing a deep dive today into a vast array of sources, from The Guardian's retrospective to CBS News coverage, and even Kevin Van Passen's cultural commentary. And our mission here is to map out the true story of Brenda Fricker, who recently passed away in Dublin at the age of 81. The news was confirmed by her agent, Phil Belfield, who noted she passed after a period of ill health.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad.
It is. But what really stands out to me isn't just the factual reality of her death, but the specific language Belfield used to describe her. He said, "We will never see her like again. The world is lesser for the lack of her."
That phrasing is just so deliberate. It's not your standard boilerplate PR release. When someone says the world is lesser for the lack of her, they aren't just mourning an actress. They are mourning this localized force of nature.
Exactly.
And you can feel that specific weight in the massive wave of nostalgia currently flooding the internet. I mean, for an entire generation of millennials and Gen Xers, she was the emotional anchor of the holiday season.
Which, of course, brings us directly to Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Now, I was reading through Kevin Van Passen's latest blog, and he points out a detail that completely changes how you view that film.
Oh, really? What was it?
Well, we all recognize her instantly, right? But if you look at the official script and the movie credits, her character never actually gives Kevin McAllister her name. She is strictly credited as the Pigeon Lady.
Yes, and that omission is just brilliant from a storytelling perspective. By remaining nameless, she becomes this, ethereal archetype.
Right. Totally.
When she has that deeply visceral conversation with Kevin in the attic of Carnegie Hall, where she explains her broken heart and how she stopped trusting people, how her life fell apart, she is acting as a mirror for Kevin's own fears of abandonment. She is the ultimate outsider, looking down on the warmth of the city from the rafters.
But the production behind those scenes was actually grounded in some pretty harsh, practical reality. Like, take the famous turtle doves, for example.
Oh, yeah, the ones Kevin gives her at the end?
Right, as a symbol of friendship. I always assumed they were just cheap ceramic props or maybe spun glass. But the sources reveal they were crafted by a real-world artist named John Perry. And he specifically made them out of a translucent resin.
Which is such a fascinating intersection of art and utility.
Yeah, it's like outfitting a stunt car. It has to look like a fragile, delicate classic on the outside, but it needs to withstand a demolition derby on the inside. Because, you were handing this prop to a 10-year-old child actor who's going to keep it in his pocket all day.
Exactly, yeah.
It had to look like glass,
Yeah.
but be durable enough for Macaulay Culkin to carry around without just shattering it everywhere.
I love the analogy because it perfectly encapsulates Brenda Fricker herself. On screen in that moment, she looked incredibly fragile, but behind the scenes, she was forged from pure iron.
Yeah, that's spot on.
And speaking of the gritty reality of filming, we have to talk about the Plaza Hotel. You think of movie magic, right? But the script required her to be swarmed by actual live birds. So Brenda would finish a 14-hour shoot in the freezing cold and then return to one of the most luxurious hotels in the world, literally covered in pigeon feces.
Covered in it. And in one of those bizarre slice-of-life historical crossovers, The Guardian notes she stepped into the Plaza elevator one evening, completely covered in bird mess, and ran straight into Donald Trump.
Wow.
And I want to be super clear here for everyone listening. We are just neutrally reporting exactly what the sources say regarding this encounter. But according to Brenda's own recounting of it, he didn't even blink. He just looked at her and politely asked, "How's it going?"
It is the ultimate New York juxtaposition. I mean, you have this acclaimed working-class Irish actress masquerading as a homeless woman, smelling like a bird sanctuary, sharing a tiny elevator with a billionaire real estate mogul in the middle of his own luxury hotel. It's so absurd you just couldn't write it into a script.
You really couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But the cultural footprint she left went far beyond just a memorable Christmas cameo. If you look at the public reaction from Ireland this week, the Irish Deputy Prime Minister, Simon Harris, publicly declared her a national treasure and an ambassador for Irish talent.
Yeah, and Edward Walsh, the U.S. ambassador to Ireland, praised her too. He called her a giant of Irish film who inspired generations.
It really highlights the massive duality of her fame.
Yeah.
To the global box office, she was the Pigeon Lady. To the people of Ireland, she was absolute cinematic royalty.
Yep, royalty.
But before she was feeding birds in Central Park, she was actually making history on the most prestigious stage in Hollywood. And you won't believe where she ended up keeping her Oscar.
Oh, this is the best part.
If you love these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed. We'll get even crazier stories ahead.
Yeah, the Oscar story is the perfect lens to understand who Brenda truly was.
Okay, so let's wind the clock back to 1989. This is 3 years before she was cast in Home Alone 2. Brenda starred in a gritty, independent Irish film called My Left Foot.
Incredible movie.
It is. She played Mrs. Brown, the fiercely protective mother of Christy Brown, who was a working-class Dublin writer born with severe cerebral palsy. And her performance was so raw and authentic that she beat out Julia Roberts and became the very first Irish woman to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress.
And her acceptance speech was just a masterclass in stoic grace. She stood on that stage in front of the most powerful people in the industry and simply thanked Christy Brown for being alive.
She did, yeah.
She famously quipped that anyone who gives birth 22 times deserves an Oscar, and she dedicated the win entirely to the people of Ireland.
But here is where I have to push back a little, or at least ask for some psychological context from you, because the sources point out that after dedicating this massive historic win to her country, she went home and kept the Oscar in a plastic bag under her bathroom sink.
She did.
And sometimes she even used it to prop open the bathroom door. I mean, I get being humble, but isn't that almost insulting to the Academy? Like, why go to the ceremony at all if you're going to treat the award like a literal doorstop?
It's a great question, and I think it really gets to the core of her worldview. You have to remember where she came from. She learned her craft in the grueling trenches of British television on soaps like Casualty and Coronation Street.
Right.
That is blue-collar, factory-line acting. You memorize 15 pages of dialogue a day, you hit your mark, and you go home. To her, acting was a trade like carpentry or plumbing.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when Hollywood tried to shower her with this intense, ego-driven worship, she rejected it entirely. To her, worshiping a golden statue was just ridiculous. Using it as a doorstop wasn't an insult to the craft of acting. It was a subversive rejection of the Hollywood machine's ego.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's like trying to sell a polished diamond to someone who spent their entire life working in a coal mine. She knew exactly what it took to get the job done, and she had zero patience for the pretension surrounding it.
Exactly.
She even admitted she used to steal spoons from the fancy Beverly Hills hotels because the immense wealth felt so absurd to her.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that highly attuned working-class radar made her completely immune to the intimidation tactics of Hollywood executives. Take a reaction to Harvey Weinstein, for instance.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he was the producer who fiercely championed My Left Foot. And at the time, he was one of the most feared and powerful men in the industry. But Brenda saw right through him from day one. When she met him, she described feeling physically repulsed. She said he emanated something disgusting, calling him like a big sweating pig. She trusted her gut, and she did not care how powerful he was.
Good for her.
Oh.
And she was equally uncompromising with her fellow actors, too, even the legends. Like Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor for playing Christy Brown in that same film.
Mm-hmm.
And Day-Lewis is notorious for his extreme method acting.
Oh, yeah, he is intense.
Super intense.
Yeah.
During the shoot, he refused to break character. He stayed in the wheelchair, he insisted on being fed, and he even forced the crew to carry him over heavy lighting cables. And Brenda was incredibly vocal about how much this annoyed her.
She essentially told him to back off. She said something like, "Look, we all have a method. I don't mind yours, but if it interferes with my little method, then step back."
It's like they were building the exact same house, but Daniel Day-Lewis insisted on living inside the walls while the concrete was still wet.
Yes.
And Brenda just wanted to show up with her toolbox at 9 a.m., lay the bricks, and go to the pub.
That is precisely it. And what's fascinating is that Day-Lewis respected her for it. He recognized that her little method was just as effective as his torturous one. They actually remained fond of each other, and he would call her occasionally just to tell her she was being bold.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, because her pragmatic approach worked. It allowed her to seamlessly jump from a gritty soap opera to a multi-million-dollar film like A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey, to So I Married an Axe Murderer without ever losing her authenticity.
But where did that deep emotional authenticity come from? Because, you don't deliver performances with that much grounded pain unless you understand it intimately. And later in this deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming, the devastating secret trauma she paid psychiatrists a fortune to forget.
It's heavy. When you uncover the private reality she was living with, her entire career takes on a completely different, almost heroic context.
It really does. So, in 2025, just a year before she passed, Brenda published a highly anticipated memoir called She Died Young, A Life in Fragments. And in true pragmatic Brenda fashion, she didn't write it to secure her legacy or feed her ego. She openly admitted she only wrote it to pay off a tangled saga of disputed debts.
Yeah, she hated writing it. She described the process as murder for me, rewriting and deleting sentences over 4 grueling years just to get it out.
And we really need to give a strong implied trigger warning here, because the facts outlined in The Guardian's coverage of her memoir are truly harrowing. We've finally learned the source of that deep well of pain she drew from on-screen. At age 8, she was groomed by a 30-year-old bachelor from a theater group, a man the book refers to as CMSS.
God, it's just sickening.
Her parents sent her to him for elocution lessons, and he exploited that trust. By her early teens, she was self-harming.
And the physical trauma matched the psychological trauma.
Yeah. When she was 14, she survived a horrific bicycle accident where she went face first through a car windshield. But because the driver had local political connections, the incident was completely covered up.
Unbelievable.
He was left hospitalized for 2 agonizing years. Her education was derailed, and she was entirely stripped of any justice or agency.
When you experience that level of systemic silencing at 14, it fundamentally rewires how you view authority. Suddenly, her utter lack of intimidation when dealing with Hollywood executives or pretentious method actors makes perfect sense. She had survived far worse monsters in her own neighborhood.
Absolutely. And the tragedies just compounded relentlessly. She endured 2 rapes in her adulthood. One of them was by an English actor named James Donnelly, who, ironically, was also a star on Coronation Street.
Yes, horrifying.
She suffered intense medical trauma, too, including a hysterectomy performed without her permission following a miscarriage, which permanently ended her ability to have children. Her mother, who physically abused her, passed away following a brain tumor diagnosis. And her beloved sister Grania eventually died as an alcoholic at the age of 68.
It is a staggering, suffocating catalog of human suffering. To carry all of that and still wake up and deliver performances that bring joy to millions of people, it requires a level of fortitude that is really hard to comprehend.
It is. But this is where I find the public's reaction so frustrating. When the memoir came out and these facts went viral, the internet immediately tried to turn her into this tragic meme. You saw these endless social media threads drawing heartbreaking parallels between her real-life trauma and the broken, isolated character of the Pigeon Lady.
Right, of course they did.
It's very easy to look at that laundry list of horrors and just see a victim.
And Brenda fiercely, aggressively rejected that narrative. She despised the pity. She refused to let the internet paint her as a helpless tragedy. When she retired to Dublin, she wasn't hiding from the world in defeat. She was resting on her own terms.
The sources paint a deeply unapologetic picture of her final years. Yes, the physical toll of her life caught up with her. She was largely confined to her bed due to swollen joints, and she was taking 25 pills a day to manage the pain. But she wasn't wallowing. She was drinking Guinness, playing snooker when she could, and hanging out with her dogs.
My absolute favorite detail from her later years is how she consumed media. Like, look at today's influencers who spend hours manufacturing fake drama for clicks and curating these perfectly polished aesthetic lives.
Oh, yeah.
Compare that to Brenda Fricker, this legendary Oscar-winning actress who worked with the greatest cinematic minds of a generation, openly admitted that her favorite thing to do was stay up all night binge-watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
She literally said it was better than sex and better than getting drunk.
Exactly. Because when you have survived genuine visceral trauma and you have seen the fake, polished authenticity of Hollywood up close, you just want to be entertained.
So true.
She found immense joy in the loud, unpretentious, trashy drama of reality television. She didn't need high art to validate her intelligence.
It completely redefines what we think of as authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
She maintained this dark, stoic, Irish sense of humor right to the bitter end. In her final interview with The Guardian, the reporter asked how she was doing, and she deadpanned, "I'm having a dreadful death. I'm just dying every day in pain." But then she immediately followed it up with a laugh, saying, "I'll probably live to be 100.
She never lost her spark. Even through the haze of medication, she told that same reporter, "Do everything while you're young. Just do it." That isn't the advice of a victim. That is the battle cry of a survivor who squeezed every single drop of experience out of the time she had.
Definitely. Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because as we look at the totality of her life, there is one final detail about her legacy that provides the most perfect closure imaginable.
Yeah, when you look back at her entire journey, from the grooming and the cover-ups in Dublin, to the grueling factory-line schedules of British soap operas, to refusing to play Hollywood's ego games, to finding global fame covered in pigeons in Central Park, you realize that she paid a heavy price for her resilience.
She really did.
She admitted she paid psychiatrists a fortune to forget the things she eventually wrote in her memoir, but she wrote it anyway. She reclaimed her own narrative. And I want to leave you with a final, deeply poetic thought to mull over regarding that narrative.
What is it?
We all know Brenda Fricker best as the Pigeon Lady. For decades, she has been defined in pop culture by the heavy, grounding, survivalist presence of city birds flocking to her in the snow. But her very last cinematic role, her final bow on screen before she passed, was in a 2024 independent film directed by Todd O'Sullivan. And the title of that film was The Swallow.
Wait, you're kidding?
No! Her agent specifically noted that her performance in that film showcased her absolute truth and majesty.
Wow.
Consider the beautiful irony of that. A woman beloved by the world for being covered in pigeons, a bird that survives by scavenging the concrete, ultimately took her final cinematic bow in a film named after a swallow. It is the perfect, enduring symbol for her, a soaring, resilient escape from a life of unimaginable heavy hardship, flying upward into true, immortal freedom.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.